Hello and welcome to my presentation. Today I'd like to introduce you to my Minecraft version of the mission Santa Clara de Asís. I designed the layout of the mission using a reference book from the library called Santa Clara de Asís by Amy Margaret. The mission Santa Clara de Asís is located in Santa Clara, California, and was founded on January 12, 1777. It's the 8th mission in the mission chain. It was named by the priest, Father Sarah, who chose to name it after a woman that was the first to serve as a patron saint, St. Clara of Assisi. At the entrance of the mission is a very large cross. It represents Catholicism and how it was brought by the Spanish to the Ohlone Indians. A fun fact about it is that it was built using pieces of the cross from other renditions that used to exist. First, we will head over to the mission chapel or church. It was relocated around 5 times due to getting burnt, getting flooded, and earthquakes, and rebuilt 6 times, the last time due to a fire that occurred in 1929. The front of the chapel shows off statues of Catholic saints. While walking into the mission, you see the pews or seats where people would gather and pray. When you've walked all the way to the front, you can see the lectern the priest uses or the friar uses when he would lead prayer and other religious services. Also, the altar at the front of the church is used to celebrate Mass and perform baptisms. The inside of the church contains many statues and pieces of artwork created by the Ohlone in Spanish. Next, we will head over to the bell tower. A fun fact about the bell tower is that it has rung its bells for over 200 years during the evening at 8:30 p.m. using 4 bells. Today, there are only 3 bells remaining. The bells were made in different years and were gifts from Spain's King Alfonso XIII. The ringing of the bells in the tower were used like clocks. They wake up the mission's inhabitants to start their everyday life and all meal times. They would listen for the chimes for them to start their work, such as sewing, cooking, etc. Then the bells would ring again to inform them that they shall start eating lunch. Once again, they would go back to work after their lunch, whilst depending on the chime. Then they would eat dinner and go to bed. Next, we will head over to the nuns' quarters. This was where the nuns, women, and unmarried girls over the ages of 8 lived. Their quarters had beds or mats to sleep in and places to store their private belongings and prayer books. They were on the same schedule as everyone else. Their work mainly consisted of candle and soap making, spinning, weaving, and sewing and preparing the food. The boys' quarters were on the other side of the courtyard. Moving on, we will go over to the friars' quarters. This is where one or both of the friars slept and private prayer occurred. A friar is what someone today might call a priest. The friar had important jobs at the church. They performed communications with Mexico, performed mass and confessions, supervised work on certain projects, gathered during harvest, taught the mission, children on religion, music, and language, visited the sick and elderly, and prayed for them. They did so much they often only got 5 hours worth of sleep. Next, we will head to the soldiers' quarters, where the soldiers or elite Ohlone Indians were able to sleep and keep their belongings. Sometimes there were walls in between their beds, but in most cases they were dormitory style. Most of the Indians that worked at the mission lived close to the mission. They lived mostly around the mission in traditional pueblo villages in huts made of bark, wood, and bushes with their people, even though they did most of the work there. There are not many records of what life was like at the mission for the Indians, so little is known whether they liked it or not. The Spanish soldiers and some Indians that were also considered soldiers would go on military expeditions or guard the mission. As we leave the soldiers' quarters, we head into the vineyard where they grew grapes and other fruits and vegetables, and it was on the outside of the main mission where all the workshops were. In addition, this is where the workers would eat their meals on large tables. In the workshops is where the men and women worked. Everyone has specific jobs, but some would switch positions every once in a while because of how populated it was. You may or may not know this, but they had quite the amount of people living there. There were some specific workers who knew how to hunt, tan hides, make soap, or worked as blacksmiths. Others were good at being masons, carpenters, or shepherds. These workshops are where these services were performed. I want you to take in how beautiful that window is. Anyways, next we will head over to the courtyard. In the courtyard, they raised their cattle and sheep. They even had their own brand for the cattle. In fact, it looked like a fancy letter A. They had over 20,000 livestock. Can you believe that? They also planted crops like wheat and corn. They also had a few water and feed locations for their cattle inside of the courtyard. Next, we will head over to the cemetery, which is currently a rose garden today. The cemetery was relocated in 1871 because there is not enough space for the dead. This place is where the Indians and other inhabitants of the mission were buried over the many years of the mission's existence. Thank you so much for watching my presentation. I'll do one last aerial view for you to see the whole property. I hope you have learned something and enjoyed it. This took me over 30 hours over the course of 3 weeks to build. Thank you. Goodbye.